Hey, Thrand here, and I'm here with the Medieval Shoppe axes that we received, and a big question. You normally see this style of socket on Viking axes and axes from around that era. People will ask you, did these little points have any purpose? Some of our finds where they still have wood in the actual socket from the hilt or the shaft, you see that it's usually all the way to the top and it's shaped with it. A lot of times you'll even see people who do that, who shape the top at a point. Does this serve any function? I've left a little bit on the top of this one after I've modified it. This isn't the way it came from Medieval Shoppe. But what does this allow? When you normally attack with an axe, just like as we said with the war hatchet, which is our bearded axe, you normally don't hit this way. You're not going to hit somebody with it coming down like that. It's not going to be a perfect, when you impact, it's not going to be this way, like a sword. Sword, you might be almost at that angle, but you still want a slight angle, and then it's going to follow through with the arm. Well, with this, you pretty much impact like you're hitting with a hammer. And if you notice, when you hit with a hammer, you want to hit in such a way that the blade's utilizing this pivot at the hand to come in. So like we said with the beard, it tends to cut in a little at a time as it turns into the target. Well, if you look at that same principle in an axe like this, look how much area you have where you could miss the actual handle and cut through with this much of the blade. Almost the entire part of the blade. If you follow this angle, it almost comes down to the bottom point itself. This one, not quite the beard, but pretty close to the bottom of the actual edge where it starts. So if the blade hits that way, theoretically, it might be possible to cut through materials you normally couldn't. And we also get a lot more reach on the axe. We get to utilize more of this nice handle we got set. This is the way you get it. What we're going to do today is take Eldgrim's war hatchet, or his bearded axe, which is a common Viking style axe, earlier period, and compare it to this axe here and get the same effect. We're going to get it all the way up to the tip and then round the top of our handle. The way we're going to do that is this is an axe that comes up from the bottom, the blade. It's done a lot like a lot of tomahawks are done. We're not sure how all of them were done historically. Some of them might have been wedged on. Very rarely we find any kind of holes or pins to the socket. The axe just is put on there either straight down from the top and wedged on, or it comes up from the bottom. What we're going to do today is take this head off and show you how to mod it like this one. And you can see the difference in reach you get just from doing that. I think it's pretty obvious. An extra 1.5 to 2 inches, and the handle will not be in the way of the blade when it's cutting. If it hits at the proper angle, it can actually cut through gambesons, cut through flesh, possibly through a big roll of wet newspaper. Like, people have been asking us, why can't we do it? We tried this before, it didn't work. We actually ended up, the handle was hitting and just knocking the entire structure over as it cut through. So we're going to see what happens here today and see what we can do. Let's get started. Right. As you can see, we've got a lot of this handle sticking up here. If you're going to use this as a tool, as Eldgrim has said before, and use it like some type of a plane or something, then yes, you might want something like that. But as for a battle axe, and like I was saying about the angle, you can get it down as low as possible, to this actual point at the top and bottom of the socket. That could also help wedge it, depending on whether you wedge it open from the top or it comes up from the bottom. You're getting the spread. So if you think about these 2 points at top and bottom, depending on how thin this socket is, you get a wedging feel to help bite into it. So that could be part of it as well. But let's see if we can get this loose. I'm going to knock it loose because these are pressed up from the bottom as you get them from Medieval Shoppe. Sometimes they're closer to the tip, but this one's quite far down, and they have a little bit of a glue, so you might have to hit it a few times. Ah! That one came loose much easier than I expected, and we're sliding it right off. And as you can see, this is larger at the top, so it can't come off, so we don't want to take off too much material. What we're going to be doing now is shaving material off. I've got this one really oiled up so they don't rust. I like to rub them with Vaseline if we're just setting the shelf. Works really good. But we're going to be shaving it so I can slide it up higher, and then I can round the tip off like I did on the other one to get this nice, beautiful extra reach and get our handle out of the way. So if we cut with that angle I'm talking about for maximum power, maybe we can get through some more material without it hanging up with the hilt. So I've got my sacks. I'm going to start with shaving it. I'll start that way. We just don't want to shave too much off, but you can see where we need to shave stuff off. If you look closely, you can see where it bites into it as it's hammered up onto it. You can see the little frayed areas. Those areas need to go first. If you bite a little bit too much off, don't worry about it. Every now and then slam it back on there. See how much it's going up. Also giving you areas where you need to shave. I've got our rough work done. Now we're going to use a sander. I know it's not very nice. Well done. I'm going to be doing this just enough to smooth it out and get a little bit more off, and then I'll be testing it to see if it's going on as deep as I'd like. To use as much handle as possible so I don't have to grind much off the top to get the shape to conform to the actual point, top and bottom. Any dark areas, if there's a dark area on it where you can tell where the iron or the steel has been rubbing up against it, grind that off, because that's probably an area that needs to be removed. Also, you will know as you're doing it. It's kind of like impression a key on the locksmith, where you get a niche where it's cutting into the wood and it needs to go up farther past that. That's where you're shaving down. Just don't screw up and take too much off the end, or it will come right off the end, and then you'll be back to trying to find a way to wedge it. And these beautiful handles, it's better to keep them tapered. This may be close here. I'm going to go ahead and try it. And this is going to tell me how much more if I need, or make sure I haven't gone too far. And as we can see, we're getting a lot more than what we had. It's getting there. We can kind of judge ourselves on this. We can go another inch or so maybe. So I'm going to take it off. I'll use the sander so that way we don't mess up. Now, if you want to restain this later, that's very plausible. You can restain it because you're going to lose your finish. This is hard wood. The handles that come from Medieval Shoppe are really nice. But like I said, I don't want to go too far, but I think we're almost there. That's beautiful. Almost too much, but I think we're close enough. Now what I'm going to do is I think it will hold. we've got our beautiful cut right with that little point that comes up from the top. And like I said, you can see, even with this axe and it not having I guess, extreme curve to the point, it still has a lot more edge that can now hit. You hit with this tip coming in that way and avoid the actual hilt itself, the handle. It's not going to get in the way as easily if you're using it for battle and that type of cutting. We're going to test that out. I think we pretty much have that. What do you think, Eldgrim?
Looks better than it did before. I'm not partial to having that extra length on there. So
right, that would only be, I think, for woodworking is the only way that would come in handy. But see how much more reach we have these two axes now. You're utilizing much more of the handle. You can mod this stuff in any way. Recently we just did the, what is it, 13th century riding sword, and it's a crooked hat pommel, and for Rolling Wayzeka we shortened the hilt to make it more historically accurate, because a lot of them had very sharp hilts. I mean, they were very small. Most people didn't understand about how they were used. Well, that was what we did with that. This here, I mean, heck, you could do anything you like on it. You could tool the handle. You could sand it and refinish it. Like I sanded part of this, but you could resand the whole thing. If it comes up from the bottom like that, I mean, if you wanted, you could wrap this with some kind of rawhide or something like you see in the Vikings if you think that suits you better. Lots of things you can do. Let's get right into the testing, and we're going to see if my theory is correct and sound, and if we can actually cut rolled wet tatami, the poor man's tatami with it. Oof! Okay, we got some tearing, but it looks like the handle hit it slightly, but then glanced off. So at least it didn't hit the whole thing and break the bottom off like we're used to. So I think we're getting much closer on the idea of cutting rolled wet newspaper, a poor man's tatami, with this style of axe. Because as you see, if this would have came straight through and hit this way like we did in the other video where we had more shaft sticking through, or the handle, it would have just busted this whole thing over, knocking this over, and it would have flew that way together all in one piece. So we did get a cut through it, but it did, after it cut through, hit here at the bottom as it tore. Axes do have a little less velocity than swords because they have more mass and more impact power, so that may attribute to a little bit of that. It does have a really good edge. We have a hair of tearing, but not too much, and I don't think that's anything real significant. But it still worked a lot better than I would have expected. Now we can try this on some actual gambeson later and cutting into something, because I know that's going to give us a much deeper wound and be able to cut through deeper multiple layers of cloth. So anyway, hope you enjoyed our little modding episode, and farewell.